I'll go ahead and get us started. Hello, everyone. My name is Pam House, and I'm the president of the Galveston Bay Area chapter of the Texas Master Naturalist. Welcome to tonight's inaugural presentation. It's the first of a series of planned presentations to be offered every other month that we are calling Community AT. AT is Master Naturalist Speak for advanced training. Some of you attending tonight may not be familiar with our organizations. Others attending may have little knowledge of this evening's topic. Our purpose in this series is to explain how our shared commitment to the protection of the natural world is addressed by a wide variety of partners, scholars, and leaders who serve minority communities and communities of color, and to introduce that broader community to our organization, mission, and projects. We hope this will assist in our progress forward to the goal of true diversity, equity, and inclusion as we work together to preserve and restore our natural resources. Now I want to acknowledge a member of the 2020 class of Master Naturalists, Mohammed Nasrullah. This series of presentations was his brainchild, and he has put much effort into making the concept come to fruition, including serving as the primary point of contact for information, locating and arranging speakers, and publicizing the event. Thank you, Mohammed, for all you have done towards that end, and I hope you will continue to do it. At the end of the program, we'll tell you about our next presentation in the series, and we'll hope to have a survey for you to complete. But at this point, I'll turn it over to Mohammed for the introduction of our speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Yeah, I'm really excited about this first event in this series that we plan to do. And then hopefully the long-term vision is to increase participation in our activities from the communities of color and underrepresented communities. So I'm honored to welcome our speaker, Savim Kaliyanju. She is a certified Virginia Master Naturalist and a naturalist instructor with a passion for helping children connect with nature. In addition to teaching outdoor education classes and leading youth nature hikes for various programs and institutions, she is also the executive director of Green Muslims, a Washington, D.C. based nonprofit organization working to help connect the American Muslim community with nature and climate action. Through Green Muslims, she leads the Our Deen means faith, Our Deen is Green, youth outdoor education program, which strives to bring children and families closer to nature and their God-given responsibilities to care for it. So please join me in welcoming Sevim Kalyoncu.
Thank you so much, Mohammed. Thank you, Pam. And I would like to send Arabic greetings of peace to everyone. Assalamu alaikum, which is the common greeting shared between Muslims, which simply means peace be upon you. So thank you all so much for, number one, giving me the opportunity to speak, but also for attending this evening. Again, my name is Sevim Kalyoncu. I'm the executive director of Green Muslims. I'm also a Virginia Master Naturalist in Fairfax County, and I teach outside of Green Muslims as well, trying to get kids out into nature. So I'm going to start by just telling you a little bit about myself personally. Forgive, the bio, but it does relate very much to my work with Green Muslims, and then we can talk more about what Green Muslims is doing, and then open up for Q&A. So I really like to tell my story. I think people in the DC area have heard enough of it as is, but I actually was raised in Alabama in a little town called Cottondale outside of Tuscaloosa. And I was raised Muslim, and there was no real Muslim community where I grew up. In fact, I grew up without a neighborhood with kids. I grew up in a wooded area by a lake, and I was an only child. So what did I do in my free time? I went out into the woods and went exploring. And that experience as a child affected me more than I ever imagined that it would. I don't think I quite realized it until I myself became a mother. And the first thing I thought was, I want my child to have that experience. And why did I want her to have that experience? I wanted her to have that experience because it was at the root of my faith. I honestly feel that I call myself a Muslim today because of that connection that I felt with nature. I would go out in the woods and I would just see the beauty of nature, and it would fill my heart with such love and joy that I had to believe that there was something greater than myself. And I automatically put it together with my faith, which teaches that everything was created by God. So just playing in the woods was a real spiritual experience for me as a child. And when I became a mother, I wanted my child to have those experiences. Now I live in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. It's not quite as easy to just go in the backyard and start exploring. So I had to make an effort to take my daughter out to parks and start pointing things out. And as I realized that I was going to need to find a new job after attempting to be a stay-at-home mom, I already knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to do what I was doing for my daughter, but I wanted to expand that goal to other children as well. And so I gradually started working towards getting involved in environmental work. First, it was the broader idea, maybe just keeping the earth healthy for us and our children. But little by little, I realized what I really wanted to do was be in the woods and be taking other people out into the woods to point out the beauty of nature. And I definitely wanted to be taking children out as well. So come end of 2017, a position opens up, the executive director position opens up at Green Muslims. And Green Muslims is a nonprofit organization that's always been stationed in Washington, D.C. I myself am in Northern Virginia, and so a lot of our work now is focused here, but we do try to focus, still pay attention to the greater Washington, D.C. area. And now, especially with everything that's done on Zoom, we can safely call ourselves a national organization because we're participating in talks across the country and across the globe, thanks to everything going online. It was the end of 2018. Interestingly enough, I had already been familiar with Green Muslims and had been involved with it many, many years before, because the organization, again, I did not found this organization, I was hired, but I knew the founders. It was 2007, and there was a group of young professionals in Washington, D.C. They were friends. They would hang out after work, and they were young Muslim professionals. Those who had been raised Muslim in the United States, some had chosen the religion later in college years, for example, but they were American Muslims, and they decided one Ramadan, and that's the holy month when Muslims are fasting during the daylight hours, they decided that they were going to have what they named a zero waste leftar. So let me explain for those who are not familiar with the terminology. An iftar is the breaking of the fast at the end of day. So they were going to have an iftar with others in the DC area, other young professionals in the DC area. But this iftar was going to be a leftar, meaning they had to bring leftovers and not waste any food, because while Ramadan is a wonderful, joyous time for Muslims, and it's great to come together and to be able to eat wonderful food, there is also the risk of a lot of waste. If there's so much food, maybe it won't all get eaten, and nobody wants to bring leftovers. It all has to be new and fresh. Well, they decided, nope, you're going to bring leftovers. And furthermore, this was a zero waste leftar. So there were going to be no disposable plates, utensils, or napkins. You had to bring your plates and utensils. You had to bring cloth napkins and cups. And that's where the whole idea came for a group of American Muslims working towards green initiatives. Over the next few years, they carried out other events and partnered with other local organizations to do things like plantings and cleanups. And eventually they became a 501c3 in Washington, D.C. So here I am looking for work. knowing that I want to help children connect with nature, and I get this wonderful opportunity to work with Green Muslims. It was even better than I expected because Green Muslims already had a program that was completely in line with what I wanted to do. And this is a youth education program that is funded by local grants, and we refer to it as ODIG. ODIG standing for Our Deen is Green. Deen is the Arabic word for religion. And so we are trying to teach children at this point to understand the role of caring for the environment in their faith, in the religion of Islam. And given all the challenges of the past couple of decades, to say the least, the American Muslim community, of course, has other responsibilities, other priorities that often drive political action and support. And environment is not always at the top of the list, or at least it wasn't always. There were other concerns that were more immediate and needed to be addressed. So the goal was to get the Muslim community more involved in environmental work. And a large part of that goal was supported by getting children, Muslim American children, to develop a positive relationship with nature and the outdoors. If you love it, then you're going to care for it. If you're afraid of it, or it just seems foreign or dirty or scary, then it doesn't seem quite that important to us. So the Our Deen is Green program came to being, and it involved lessons about how our local watershed, the Chesapeake Bay watershed, functions and how humans impact it, but also learning about the nature that's around us. And so when I came to Green Muslims, that immediately became my baby, because that was exactly what I wanted to do. And I immediately took in a couple of grants to do either a larger program or more programs. And in the end, our 2019 Our Deen is Green youth education program actually became an interfaith program, thanks to the grants that we'd received. And so the goal was to pull in people of various faith perspectives and to compare faith perspectives in terms of the views towards responsibility toward nature and the importance of nature. And the whole program came to being. It was actually a 6-part program where we met 6 times. We met at a couple different local farms that not only are working to have a more earth-friendly relationship in terms of how they raise animals and grow vegetables, but also are surrounded by woods, so we could include nature hikes as well. We did service activities like cleanups and plantings, and it was a wonderful experience to get to do all of this with the children and to include their parents as well for the first time. The interfaith aspect I felt was weaker than anticipated. It was an interfaith event, but I found that reaching out to other faith communities when it's hosted by a group called Green Muslims to be a bit challenging. I found so many churches and synagogues to be particularly supportive of advertising, but the non-Muslim turnout was fairly low. So I learned that it's best to partner, and I hope that we'll have future opportunities to do interfaith youth educational programs again, but I'll be sure to include other organizations so everyone feels comfortable getting involved. So in addition to this youth education aspect, Green Muslims also finds itself playing an important role in serving as a Muslim voice in any sort of environmental work, especially when dealing with interfaith environmental organizations and interfaith conversations, rather, between environmental organizations. There are definitely more Muslim organizations dealing with the environment and with nature than there were when Green Muslims started in 2007. But because we've been around for a while, oftentimes our name is the first to pop up in such conversations. So Green Muslims always tries to provide that voice when they want when a Muslim perspective on environment and climate action is needed. And we also provide educational programming within the Muslim community as well. We often speak at mosques. We will take youth groups out on nature hikes and that sort of thing. So education is key for us. both within the Muslim community and also helping educate others about the Islamic perspective on environment. But we need that education within our community as well, because as I said, environmental concerns have not been at the top of our list of priorities in recent years. And so we try to go to the heart of our faith and the role that Islam teaches a Muslim has on earth. And the word that comes up is Khalifa. The Khalifa is, although there are definitely different definitions that can be given, it's the responsibility given to humans by God on earth. I remember when I was a child growing up, I kept hearing the definition being vicegerent. Humans are the vicegerents of the earth. Unfortunately, as a child, I didn't know what a gerent was, so I wasn't sure what a vicegerent was. But nowadays, I'm finding that a more common definition fits in perfectly with the goals of Green Muslims, and that is steward or steward of the earth. So Islam teaches Muslims that they are the Khalifa or the stewards of the earth. And for many people, it is now becoming obvious that that means we are responsible for caring for the earth. It's not that we are in control and we can do whatever we want to it because it doesn't matter and we are the bosses. No, God is the boss and we were placed here to care for it. And as the Muslim community becomes more and more familiar with this understanding of the role of Muslims on earth, the God-given role of humans and Muslims on earth as Khalifa, we are seeing the importance of getting involved in environmental stewardship. So again, I am a master naturalist. I have a passion for just helping people love nature. I see that as the first step, especially with children, for developing that concern so they grow up to be true stewards of the earth. But others in Green Muslims, the ones with the environmental sciences degrees, they also go into other actions that can be taken both as individuals or as families or as communities to become more green in a way that helps the planet. So Green Muslims really tries to do a lot, but we don't see ourselves as experts at all of these things. We're just the link between the Muslim community, the first step in education, and then the connection to other organizations that teach more, do more. And there's definitely plenty to do at our level as well. So a couple more things that I wanted to mention in terms of our emphasis in our teachings. Number one is that humans are the Khalifa of the earth. They are the stewards of the earth, and it is our responsibility to take care of the planet. So we need to learn how to do that. But the other one, and again, this is what touches my heart most closely, is going back to my experience as a child when I was alone out in the woods and how I would see the beauty in the plants and in the animals. And I would hold the frogs in my hand and I would smell the flowers and see the beautiful trees. And the beauty and the love that I felt in my heart played a massive role in my spiritual development. That was the proof for me that God existed. And I didn't have a formal education or even that much of an informal education in terms of my religion as a child. There was no mosque to attend, no Sunday school, as we call it, or religious school. And so I felt early on that the first holy book that I read of God's teachings was actually the earth, was nature, even before I was reading the Quran. And it brings me such joy to nowadays hear some of our Islamic scholars or imams, the clergy, talking about how the earth is also considered a book of God in Islam. So this is something that I felt personally as a child, and now to hear scholars speaking of the same concept is really, really touching for me. So that's another point that I am very eager to bring up in our talks through Green Muslims. We are the ones responsible for the earth. We are the Khalifa, the stewards, not the bosses, not the rulers, the stewards of the earth. We must take care of it. And the earth itself contains messages for us to learn from. And with that in mind, our nature hikes often become spiritual journeys as well, as we try to observe what's around us and look for signs of God's teachings, or perhaps the names of God. We can see examples of the names of God, as we refer to them, the 99 names of God, or Asma al-Husna in Islam. We can see the signs of those things in the trees, in the plants, in the animals. And so it becomes a deeply spiritual experience, as well as educational, as well as activism based. There are just so many ways that we can connect with the earth and connect with nature and start to care for it even more. So all of these things, as I say it, it sounds like a lot, but it's, again, it's a first step for many people. These are the things that we emphasize at Green Muslims when we have our educational opportunities. So we teach classes to children and families, we do nature hikes, and we also partner with a lot of other organizations to do trash pickups, tree plantings, that sort of activity, just to familiarize the community more with all the things that they could be doing and why they do need to play a role in taking care of the environment. We also educate through larger organizations about steps that mosques and homes can take that would be good for the environment, solar panels, for example, that sort of thing. And we're always open to partnering with other organizations just to serve as the connector between the American Muslim community and all of these great groups that we have that already exist, that already teach about nature or environmental activism, climate action, all these things. So we like to see ourselves as a stepping stone. And we do, of course, we have our social media role as well. And on our website, we have a page with links to other organizations that we have worked with in the past, the ones we call our partners. They're people we've talked to, maybe we've partnered on a project, maybe we've started talking about potential projects, but we want the people who come to our website to see these other groups as well, and perhaps get involved with them when they find exactly what it is that they want to be involved with. So again, a stepping stone. As the issues of diversity become so key for all organizations in the United States nowadays, and groups, I have found that it's often nice to start within your own community. And so Green Muslims tries to serve as that place that Muslims can start to see what else they can be doing, what other groups they can get involved with. And I find it very exciting when over the last year, 3 people have come to me personally and started talking about how they're interested in becoming Master Naturalists. And so I think that's definitely a good sign. But even more exciting is when I start working with children who want to stomp the bugs that are in front of them. And then after a few classes, they know that that bug is not their enemy. They should not kill it. In fact, it's their friend, and it's really cool to see it. So seeing that shift in perspective is very exciting, very, very fulfilling for me personally. I'm trying to think if there was anything else in particular that I was going to talk about. I may be ready to open up to Q&A at this point, because those are the main things that I wanted to share. You know, my personal perspective, what Green Muslims does and what it aims to do, and particularly the concept of Khalifa in Islam and the earth as a book of God. Any thoughts, or shall we just go on to Q&A?
I think Q&A is fine. I think we can go to that.
And we do have a couple questions. The first one is, do you find that certain age groups of children are more interested and participatory in nature-focused education than others?
That's a very good question. And before I have an answer, but before I answer it, I wonder sometimes if my own biases play a role in this. I definitely find it easier to work with elementary age kids. Maybe that's because that's the age of my own child. But some people are intimidated by kindergartners, and I'm not so much. Although they may at first be scared or aggressive towards what they see, after a little bit of exposure and discussion, they're very open to observing and learning. And I love to start with the younger kids because you're changing their perspective early. And I'm not saying anything against middle schoolers and high schoolers, but I think it's great to start with elementary age kids to get that exposure in early. They change their perspectives and they become activists for the rest of their lives. They also take the messages home to their parents. And so while I do enjoy working with other adults, it's even better to work with kids who can then share the messages with their parents. And so that's my personal preference. And I found it to be very productive. I go back to the kids I've worked with later, and I see already that their whole perspectives have changed.
Okay.
There was something about the video. We can stick that in at the end if you'd like, or would you like to put it right now?
That would be up to you.
We can take a couple more questions and then
Sure.
share
Okay.
that.
That sounds great to me. Okay.
Okay, so the next one is not so much a question, but beautiful and inspiring talk and organization. They would love to have your contact information, organization contact for further discussions on the subject and how we can further educate our local community.
Thank you for asking that because I always forget to include it. I did mention our website, so I strongly recommend checking our website out. It is greenmuslims.org, and I can be reached at sevim@greenmuslims.org, SEVIM. Simple as that. Drop me a note. It may take me a while to reply because things are so busy these days, but I would love to be in touch with other organizations. And we are primarily focused in the Washington, D.C. metro area because that's where we started. And we're still a relatively small organization. Most of our work is volunteer based, but there is such a need for other Muslim organizations throughout the country, and a need for partnerships between Muslim organizations and larger environmental organizations. So we are always open for discussion of partnerships and the possibilities of starting other chapters.
Good. Okay.
All right, I've got another question here. Do you try to get older kids to work with and teach younger kids as a way to get the older kids into nature education?
Oh my gosh. Thank you for mentioning that. There are some opportunities where that may have come up, but it's not something that we've aimed to do. I think it's a very good idea, especially now that environmental education, nature education is becoming more mainstream in our school systems. I think that's a great idea. I do with some of my other work, outdoor teaching work, I do find that especially with the older kids, it's great when they take charge and are not told what to do, but they are the bosses. So I think that's an amazing idea that we should definitely work with.
Our next question is, what are the outreach efforts your Master Naturalist chapter that have contributed to more diversity in membership? I think it's missing a word in there.
So it's for the Master Naturalist chapter itself. Unfortunately, I am so busy. I have not been directly involved. And so I'm really not familiar at this point, although it is always a topic of conversation. I don't want to say anything that I'm not completely sure about.
Mm-hmm.
Could I follow up with that? It's not my question, but how did you learn about Master Naturalist and become a Master Naturalist?
Again, it goes back to my story about what I knew I wanted to do. My childhood experience is at the root of everything, and it was very unique. I have found over time, I'm not the only American Muslim who had an experience like that. There are actually a lot of us who grew up without a community per se, and we may have spent more time out in nature, but it's still a more minority experience within the American Muslim community. So for me, it goes back to that love of nature that I always took for granted until I became a mother. And then I realized, oh, I was going to have to make an effort to take my child out into nature. She couldn't just go running around on her own. And I started searching for ways to learn without having to go back to college. And that's when I learned about my local Master Naturalist chapter.
That's great.
All right, and the next question, is there an active green Muslim group in the Houston-Galveston area?
That is the big question. And the answer is no, but there should be. And so if there is an interest, hopefully Mohammed and I will be talking about this more. Again, Green Muslims is predominantly a volunteer organization, and it takes quite a bit of effort to put together a program that we can then pass on and allow chapters to develop, but we know we need to do it. And so if anyone is particularly interested, maybe you can help us get started with that, get involved with Green Muslims as it is right now, and then start your own chapter. I'm serious. I may not be putting in as much time as you think I should on such an important goal, but that's just because I'm too busy. I think it's a great idea. And so please feel free to get in touch with Mohammed or email me directly, and we will have a conversation about it. We also know there's quite an interest on the West Coast. And so we think sometimes about having regional chapters rather than state chapters, but it's been in conversation for years now. We need to do something about it.
How do you reach out to other cultural groups to provide diversity in your programs? In other words, what's your take on meeting with other organizations?
So this goes back to my effort, and I say my because at the time I was the one who was most involved in starting the program, but other staff members who came on board later were definitely involved. So the Green Muslims effort to have an interfaith youth education program for the first time. Primarily, our focus had always been Muslims because there weren't enough Muslims involved in these issues. So we wanted to get Muslim Americans involved. But even within the Muslim American community, there's a question of diversity. We do reach out to multiple communities and mosques, even those that tend to be more ethnically focused. And we also have to make a concerted effort to reach out to the African American Muslim community as well. And sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's always easier just to talk to the people you know, the people that you hang out with all the time. And so advertising and direct outreach are what we did for that. Now with our attempt at an interfaith program, I immediately started reaching out to people I knew who could then put me in touch with their community. And the support was wonderful, but the participation was still minimal. And that's how I learned that partnerships are the answer. And from now on, when we try to put together an interfaith program, we intend to go about it with partners from other faith perspectives so that everyone will feel comfortable participating. So I know it's challenging, no matter how much we want the diversity. We often find ourselves in our own bubbles, whatever they may be, and we have to go outside of those bubbles, and then we don't know how we will be received. That's why Green Muslims really likes to introduce people to other organizations. Come get involved with this Muslim organization if that's what you're comfortable with, and you will learn about all these other wonderful groups that you can get involved with as well.
All right, next question. Do you have to be a Muslim to participate in Green Muslim events?
Very good question that I often take for granted. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Anyone is welcome to attend anything. I mean, we have plenty of people on our listserv who are not Muslim. Again, our partner organizations and friends, and anyone is always welcome to participate. But then we have to make sure that that's clear so that no one feels uncomfortable not being a Muslim. But all of our activities, even the ones that are focused specifically on Islamic teachings about nature, or the more spiritual events that try to help, they're focused primarily on young Muslims and helping them connect nature with their faith. Anyone is always welcome to attend, just to learn or to share the spiritual experience. I had a wonderful experience pre-COVID with an interfaith nature walk. And I actually decided that's what I'd like to do for the rest of my life, just go on spiritual nature walks, but I don't know if I can survive off of that. But it was wonderful hearing different faith perspectives on the role of nature and their connection between nature and their faith. It was fascinating because it sounded identical to my own. And I love that from a religious and spiritual perspective. But there were some people who spoke up later on. They had participated in this hike and they were stating, well, you know, I'm actually agnostic. Religion in and of itself hasn't played a major role in my life. But when you talked about your feelings with nature, that's what I experienced as well. And I don't know, that nothing makes me happier than when we come together from diverse backgrounds, thinking we're so different, and then we share our hearts and we understand each other. Sometimes you just have to go beyond the labels, the terminology, and express your feelings. And we find that we do understand each other better than we thought. But I digress. Yes, anything we do is open to anyone, anytime, but a lot of it is focused, in name, it will be focused on teaching Muslims about environmental issues or nature, or teaching about Muslim Islamic perspectives on those topics. But everyone is always welcome, and we're always up for interfaith projects as well.
Great.
So is there a website for Green Muslims? This person would like to include their Girl Scouts Juniors group and would love to know how they could do that.
Website, greenmuslims.org, and my email, sevim@greenmuslims.org. Drop me a note. Other people do that quite a bit, and we have led Girl Scout hikes. And I have a phone call tomorrow morning about how a homeschool group can get involved with our activities and help volunteer. So just drop me a note, please.
Okay.
All right, this next one is a comment, and I'm really happy to be able to read this comment because this is from one of my friends, Luxi Muhammad. And she says, I am so happy that you're sharing your beautiful work as it is close to my heart's passion. I too am a Master Naturalist, 2019 Galveston County Bay Area Master Naturalist.
We get very excited about this because, you know, there aren't that many, but I think the number is growing. That is a Muslim American Master Naturalist. Not to speak down for any other ethnic or religious group, of course, but I have this feeling deep inside that now is the time for Muslims to get involved in naturalist programs and environmental work. I just have this feeling like certain other issues are kind of hopefully subsiding, and now we can connect this with our faith. At first I was afraid I'd be jealous if I wasn't the only Muslim naturalist around, but no, I'm not. I'm very happy about it. Thank you so much.
Right.
And now we have a question from Peggy that was is a question of mine too. Have you encountered groups such as Green Catholics or Green Baptists or Green Lutherans? I mean, I think maybe we need all of these groups.
Right. Well, you know, that's a wonderful question because I've asked myself why I don't encounter groups with those names, but I have my own hypothesis as to why this group called Green Muslims exists. Now, mind you, our local, especially here in my area, I know that our mosques or Islamic centers, we tend to call them Islamic centers because they're more than just the place of worship. They're also where people gather for social events, but also community activities. They have the youth educational programs on the weekends, and it might be where their scouting troops meet. So we have numerous active Islamic centers here in the greater DC area. And a lot of them have green groups. They may or may not be active. They may or may not be new. But number one, there weren't always these groups. Green Muslims I think Green Muslims came about before most of these green groups within the Islamic centers came about. So it was necessary. But also, not every Muslim feels directly connected to a particular religious institution. So we're out there for anybody, whether you have a mosque that you attend, or maybe you hop around to different mosques or Islamic centers or places for Friday prayer. And so you're not feeling directly connected with one, or maybe you're not comfortable with any in particular. Green Muslims is for everybody. And so, well, I haven't encountered other groups groups from other religious perspectives that are just that blunt about it, green, whatever. I can't say that they don't exist, but I know that it's necessary within the Muslim community to have a general group as well that's not directly tied to any particular religious institution. And that's why we have Green Muslims.
I think that's the last question for now. Do you want to still, there's time to show the video and see if there's any more questions afterwards?
We're ready to do that, I believe.
Sounds good.
In Islam, it is taught that humans are the Khalifa or stewards of the earth. We were placed here by God with the responsibility to care for the planet and not abuse it. Islam also teaches that the signs of God are all around us, especially in the natural world, in the trees, flowers, animals, and rocks. Green Muslims strives to emphasize these core Islamic teachings as it works to connect Muslims with nature and environmental stewardship. We participate in panel discussions about the religion and the environment. We partner with local and national organizations for educational and outdoor recreational events. And we provide information about going green and connecting with nature to the local Muslim community through talks at mosques, nature hikes with scout troops and schools, and our very own youth education program called Our Deen is Green. Deen is an Arabic word commonly translated as religion or faith. Through the Our Deen is Green program, or ODIG for short, Green Muslims is able to introduce kids to the beauty of our local natural environment, discuss the threats the planet is facing, and even draw connections between nature and faith. Summer 2019 saw our first interfaith ODIG, where children and their parents explored multiple faith perspectives on the environment while learning about the interconnectedness of the Chesapeake Bay watershed. It involved nature hikes, visits to local educational farms, and service projects like trash removal along the Potomac River and invasive plant removal. Other recent Green Muslims projects include our annual Ramadan calendar, which gives daily reminders through the Islamic holy month of things people can do to help and connect with the planet. Khalifa Conversations, which are discussions on the practical ways to live in the environmental spirit of Islam, held in partnership with the organization Green Ramadan, and participate in various local, national, and international conferences and webinars with the American Climate Leadership Summit, Hope for the Future in the UK, and the Jewish Islamic Dialogue Society of Washington.
So Sevim, I have another question since there's a pause. So you were talking about doing work in the Chesapeake watershed area. Do you do work with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation?
Yes, we have interacted with them before. I have my connections up there as well, and I did some training, personal training through them. So whenever there's a possibility of partnering with our local organizations, we do try to take advantage of that. And one of my hopes, and thank you so much for mentioning them because it reminded me what to put on the next grant proposal. I would love to get some kids actually out on the bay through their educational programs. And especially when it comes to education and activism, there are so many groups around here already doing things. If we can just pull the Muslim community into their work by partnering, that's good enough for us. So yes, we do have some connections with that organization as well.
And I'm going to take my prerogative and ask one more. So how about partnering with the Master Naturalist? Have there been any kinds of partnerships between the two?
When I got this invitation, I thought about that.
Yeah.
I use my volunteer time with Green Muslims for my hours, my Master Naturalist hours. And I know I have the support of our local group, but yes, that's another option. I mean, I'm finding that there are really so many opportunities for partnerships. We just need the time and the energy to put these programs together. So
Yeah.
I'm making a note of both of those, to write them into our next grant proposal. But they're very good ideas. And
That's
yes, I'm excited about how many different organizations we already have working to preserve our local environments and to educate people about them. I just want Green Muslims to connect with those and help our community connect with those organizations too.
Terrific. Were there any more questions, Chris or Cindy?
I think that is the last one.
Okay.
And we've had a couple people, and maybe Chuck can speak to it, asking about having a copy of the recording, because we just had one other request. So,
Well, we're going to be working with Sevim after this is over and see if we can package it up into something that that will be useful for her organization and ours. So this has been a really good discussion. So I'm hoping that will see the light of day not too distant future. So it's our challenge.
All right. I want to thank you, Savim, for just a really wonderful and enlightening presentation. It's always wonderful to get a window opened on something I didn't know about before. And so I really am so glad you made the time to be with us, because I know this week was insane for you. So thank you for joining us from Virginia. I also need to comment that your comments about Ramadan feasting and everything, we all know about that. Our motto for our local chapter is food, fun, and friendship. So we know about good eating. So we're so glad that all of you were able to attend. And I want to give my special thanks to the Zoom team members, Chuck Snyder, Cindy Howard, Chris Anastas, and also to our chapter vice president, Mike Pettit, because he made a lot of contributions to making this evening possible also. So our next community AT will be on November 16th at 6 p.m. via Zoom. Our own friend Jaime Gonzalez from the Nature Conservancy will speak to us, and the topic will be Passing the Green Torch, Accelerating Diversity and Inclusion in the Texas Conservation Movement. So we hope that all of you can join us then.